Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to really get into your complex source material, pull out what matters, and help you get informed.
That's the plan.
And today, well, it's a big one. We have a challenging mission ahead. A really fast-paced look from multiple angles at these sources, dealing with the run-up to the crucifixion, and focusing especially on arguably the most critical figure in that story, Judas Iscariot.
Absolutely. And the documents we're looking at, they don't just, retell the story we think we know. They challenge some core assumptions about why things happened, about Judas's character, the meaning behind events like the Last Supper.
Right.
We'll be concentrating on those key turning points, the supper, the agony in the garden, Gethsemane, and then the arrest itself.
Yeah.
Really trying to unpack the different views in this material.
Okay, let's unpack Judas first, because, wow, the sources we have here are pretty stark in how they describe him. They use some incredibly sharp and, frankly, very provocative language, like calling Judas a Negro spy and a black devil. These are direct descriptions from the material.
And it's so important we stress this. We are reporting the extreme, honestly shocking language found in this specific source material. We're absolutely not endorsing it.
No, of course not.
But we have to look at it to understand the intensity of the historical bias, the animosity aimed at Judas in some of these narratives.
That context is absolutely vital. And what's fascinating is how these sources build this really contradictory picture of him. He wasn't just some greedy disciple, not according to this.
No.
Yes, an early follower of Jesus, but also painted as like a secret agent, a spy for the Sanhedrin, and even apparently friendly with the Roman governor, Pilate. It sounds like he was trying to play all sides.
That's the picture painted. And this duplicity, it apparently extended to his day-to-day role, too. He was the one holding the money bag, right? The treasurer for the disciples.
Yeah, the keeper of the common fund. That's mentioned.
But the material we have explicitly says he wasn't honest about it. It claims he was known to, steal from the fund.
So there's this background of financial issues, maybe dishonesty, which leads straight into the huge question: why did he betray Jesus? The sources give us a couple of main possibilities, starting with the one everyone knows: money. Greed.
Right, the 30 pieces of silver.
Exactly.
But this is where the detailed analysis in the sources gets really interesting. 30 pieces of silver, it sounds like a lot, maybe.
You think so?
But the calculation provided here, it equates that amount to 600 pieces of iron. And it works out to, get this, roughly an 80 cents per day wage back then.
80 cents a day? That totally reframes the greed motive, doesn't it?
It really does.
I mean, it suggests maybe it wasn't about becoming rich. Maybe it was, I don't know, desperation, or just a massive miscalculation about what he was doing versus what he was getting.
Precisely. Why commit such a monumental betrayal for what seems like, peanuts?
Yeah.
So if the money maybe wasn't the main driver, or at least not a huge driver, we have to look at the second motive presented, the political one. The idea that Judas wasn't after cash, he was trying to spark a revolution.
Okay, explain that.
The document suggests Judas was constantly pushing for Jesus to, overthrow the Romans, set up a kingdom right here on earth.
So he was impatient. He wanted action.
Seems like it. And this viewpoint suggests Judas didn't actually want Jesus dead. The betrayal, the arrest, it was meant to force Jesus' hand.
How so?
The idea is if Jesus was arrested by the Romans and the temple guard, he'd have to use his divine power to save himself, right?
Yeah.
To escape the trap.
Ah, so it was like trying to trigger the main event.
Exactly. To compel Jesus to finally unleash his power, overthrow Rome, and start that physical kingdom Judas wanted. He was trying to force a divine intervention, a revolution.
So under this view, he's less a greedy traitor and more a failed political strategist, making a catastrophic blunder.
That's one interpretation strongly presented in the material. But regardless of why he did it, desperation, political goals, whatever the sources are clear, his action fulfilled a known prophecy.
The one about one being lost.
And the consequence was immediate. His name was struck from the list of the 12 disciples. That political angle, though, it really sets the context for what happens next at the final meal.
Right, the Last Supper. If Judas was thinking about political upheaval, this meal becomes even more significant. It's the last dinner Jesus has with his disciples before everything changes.
And the sources add a really interesting theological layer here. They mention something specific about the context of that meal.
What's that?
The material states that at this specific moment, Jesus and the disciples were living by, what the source calls the broken law of Paul.
The broken law of Paul. That sounds unusual. What does the source imply by that?
Well, the implication seems to be that they were consciously moving past the old rules, the old ceremonial aspects of the Mosaic law. They were operating under this newer idea of grace and faith, the kind of theology Paul would later lay out very clearly. So this meal, this Last Supper, wasn't just a meal. It marked the establishment of a New Testament, a new covenant.
So it's a deliberate shift away from the old ways, symbolized by this ritual.
Exactly.
And a ritual itself is so powerful. Jesus taking bread, blessing it, breaking it, sharing it, then the cup, telling them, drink all of it, for this is my blood of the New Testament.
And crucially, he tells them to do this in remembrance of me.
Right.
So connecting the dots, it wasn't just saying goodbye. It was the defining moment, establishing the new way before the events, the sacrifice that would actually seal that new covenant.
And the very next step after establishing the covenant was,
well,
the agony needed for it.
Which takes us to the Garden of Gethsemane, and the sources point out the name itself is significant.
How so?
Gethsemane, it's actually two words put together. Gath, which means an oil press, and Shemain, meaning olive.
An olive press. Gethsemane means oil press.
Literally.
Yeah.
Located on the Mount of Olives. So think about the symbolism there. The source places this moment of ultimate crushing, emotional, spiritual in the place. Literally named the press. It's almost like geographical foreshadowing.
And the pressure was immense. The sources describe Jesus' prayer there, saying he was in such agony, his sweat was like great drops of blood falling down to the ground.
Yeah, it's an incredibly intense image. The source presents this as a real physical manifestation of the stress, the sheer weight of what he was facing, submitting to the Father's will, being pressed, quite literally, to the absolute limit.
And while he's going through this, he asks his inner circle, Peter, James, and John, just to stay awake with him, to watch.
But they fall asleep.
Yeah. What's the significance of that, according to the sources?
Well, it really highlights his isolation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He's facing this ultimate spiritual battle completely alone. And the sources make a point of noting one crucial absence. Judas is the only disciple not there. He wasn't asleep like the others. He was, busy setting the betrayal in motion, turning that political gamble into a reality.
Which brings us right to the arrest itself. They knew where to find him. Gethsemane was a known spot for them.
That's right. And the arrest wasn't subtle. It was a coordinated effort. Soldiers, officers from the high priest, all led there by Judas, and they came prepared. The source mentions torches and lanterns and torches and weapons. It wasn't a quiet chat. It was basically a military-style operation. They saw him as a potential political threat.
And the signal Judas used to identify him, a kiss.
Yeah, the source really leans into the irony there, using a sign of friendship, of peace, as the signal for an armed arrest.
It's brutal, but then there's this quick, almost chaotic moment. One of the disciples reacts.
Right, it's implied this is Simon Peter. He pulls out a sword, lashes out, and cuts off the ear of Malchus, who is the high priest's servant.
A flash of resistance. Understandable, maybe.
But then, Jesus' response is immediate, and according to the source, quite stunning. He instantly heals Malchus's ear.
Right there, in the middle of his own arrest.
Right then and there. The implication is powerful. Even in that moment, facing betrayal and arrest, he performs an act of healing, of restoration. It shows he's still ultimately in control.
He wasn't being overpowered.
No, the source suggests he was choosing to submit, to fulfill the Father's will. This wasn't something happening to him against his will, but something he was allowing through him.
And the sources say he confirmed this later, right, when the religious authorities questioned him.
Yes, he affirmed his identity, Son of Man, Son of God. And he explicitly stated that this whole sequence, the arrest, the coming crucifixion, it was all the necessary fulfillment of God's plan.
Okay, so if it's fulfilling divine will, fulfilling prophecy, who actually bears the responsibility for his death? Morally, historically, the sources seem to spread it around.
They really do. It wasn't just one person or group. It was more like a chain reaction, with different parties playing necessary roles.
So starting with the Jewish leaders.
Right. Caiaphas, the high priest, he actually prophesied, maybe unknowingly, maybe not, that it was necessary for one man to die for the people. The sources are clear. The Jewish leaders wanted him dead. They had the intent, but they didn't physically kill him. They needed an opportunity to hand him over to the Roman authorities because they didn't have the final legal power to execute.
That power belonged to the Romans.
Exactly. The sources confirm the leaders handed Jesus over, and it was the Roman soldiers who carried out the crucifixion. So you have religious and political intent from one side, but the actual execution required Roman authority.
And then we circle back to Judas. We talked about that political interpretation. Maybe he was trying to force Jesus's hand, not get him killed.
Yes, and that distinction between Judas's possible intention and the actual outcome is really crucial in these sources. His attempt, possibly desperate, maybe political, to force some kind of revolution completely backfired and led directly to the crucifixion instead. His plan, whatever it was, failed spectacularly. But in failing, it served to set everything else in motion. He became the catalyst.
So the big takeaway seems to be that responsibility here isn't simple. It's not just one person's fault. It's like a perfect storm.
That's a good way to put it.
You've got Judas's miscalculation, whether from greed or politics. You've got the Jewish leaders delegating the problem due to lack of authority, and then the Romans providing the actual means of execution. All of it, somehow, operating within this framework of prophecy and divine will.
The complexity is just immense. You see Judas maybe fulfilling a predetermined role, yet still making his own flawed choices, driven by very human motives like desperation or maybe political ambition gone wrong.
Exactly. So we've looked at Judas's complicated identity, the Last Supper establishing the new covenant, that crushing pressure in Gethsemane, and how Roman and Jewish authorities both played a part in the arrest. It leaves you with a really deep question, doesn't it?
Given that Caiaphas, the high priest, actually prophesied Jesus would die for the people and Judas acted in the way that fulfilled known prophecy, how do these narratives draw the line between someone's individual moral guilt and their perhaps predetermined role in a bigger divine story?
Yeah.
It really makes you rethink the whole dynamic. What stands out most to you as we wrap this up?
For me, it's that tension. Was Judas simply the necessary villain destined for this role? Or was he just a profoundly flawed person whose terrible mistake ended up serving a purpose far beyond his understanding? It forces you to look again.
That is definitely a deep dive. Thanks for exploring these sources with us today.